again, everybody. It is time for another edition of the Silver Bullets podcast. I am Michael Citro, and joining me is a special guest. Chip had some family stuff going on this week, was unable to record, so I'm happy to welcome to the show as our special guest host this week, Tony Gerdeman. Tony, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for meeting my extensive demands on time and location.
Yeah, we got the rider. I didn't expect it to be quite so many pages, but I'm glad we could get that all straightened out.
You're welcome.
So first of all, why don't you tell us what's been going on the ground there in down at the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah, so it's today the 24th. Is that?
Yeah, it's Christmas Eve.
So Ohio State got here on the 22nd. So they practiced every day. We were out at practice today, and it is like 53, 54 degrees, and it's cold, it is windy, and it is raining. And the Buckeyes are practicing outside today. I believe Clemson was practicing inside. So I don't know if Ohio State had the option of practicing inside anywhere. I know they were trying to figure out logistically where to go and what to do and when to do it, and try to find a window of less rain. So so we got back from that maybe an hour or two ago, and this morning it was the coordinators and 3 players on offense and 3 players on defense from both teams. And you might be super surprised to learn that neither of the departing coordinators were at the event today, even though both were scheduled to be there.
Yeah, what a shock. It's not like they got anything to do.
No, and it's not like they would have – nobody wants to sit there for 45 minutes fielding questions, but eventually you're going to have to.
Yeah, exactly. So I imagine the Buckeyes practiced outside because to them it's probably warm comparatively, and Clemson, it's like, oh, man, this is like Arctic conditions.
It is funny because I was walking to breakfast in just a polo shirt and jeans, and the guy looked at me. He's like, "Are you from Chicago? You know, how dare you not have a coat?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'm from Ohio." But it's the same difference. And they're out there. There were some wayward footballs being thrown early on, but that was just at the start of practice, and we only got to watch 15 minutes anyway. So they'll eventually get used to it and whatnot. And they practice in this, as you said, probably for the last 2 months of the season, month and a half of the season. Mm-hmm. At Clemson, if they had to practice in this, who knows what that would do to them. But there is almost no point in doing so because that's not the conditions you're going to face Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, whenever kickoff is. I'm completely turned around in my time zones. But, Ryan Day has preached all season long about being tough, and this is another way to show you're tough. But, I don't know if the purpose is really served. But, again, I don't know if they could have gone anywhere else. I don't think they could have, actually.
Mm-hmm. I think that the question really that our listeners will have is how many different kinds of fake punts did you see in practice today?
Well, I cannot go into that. About 7. I am not allowed to talk about it. But there are some spread punts and some triple option on that. But again, I cannot talk about that. But if you want to start a Patreon, we can put it behind the paywall.
Yeah, we should do that. I think you have some experience in that area, so I'll have to lean on your expertise. Was there? Chip and I had the week off last week. What is the latest on the? I guess the most famous knee in all of Ohio, the knee of Justin Fields.
Yeah, so I was right there waiting for Justin Fields, and he sat down today to talk to us, and I said, "So where are you with the knee?" And he said that he's not as far along as he was hoping for, and he was pretty visibly bummed out about it, disappointed. Mm-hmm. And then he said he's put himself somewhere around 80 to 85%, and then hoping this week he can get that up, as high as possible. But then you figure you get to game time and the adrenaline kicks up. Maybe that adds another 5 or 10%. But still, if you're not at 100%, you can go down to 60 real quick with the wrong kind of cut. But he said he will be wearing his smaller brace. That's the one he's more mobile in. Mm-hmm. but he does have the big brace as a backup in case they need that. But it's, although some people think it's a ruse and that he is at 100%, so maybe this is a little bit of gamesmanship, but he did seem pretty bummed. So he's either a very good actor or wishing his knee was a little bit better.
Well, it is all about the subterfuge this time of year. And so, maybe he's a really good actor. I don't know which online classes that Justin Fields is taking. I think you could probably take an online acting class.
Yeah, well, they have the proctors in those classes that are watching you, so that would probably be the best way to do it almost is, they're looking at your face, they're looking at your eyes, where your eyes go, and these proctors are no joke, and I'm sure they know liars when they see them, and if you're a bad actor, you're a bad liar, and so maybe that's a acting 502 or something like that is, one of these graduate level courses that maybe he's already in, even as a true sophomore.
Well, I know you and Tom. I listened to your signing day extravaganza and some of the stuff that was talked about before early signing day. Just like every year, Ohio State lost a recruit to Utah. But other than that, were there any surprises to you?
I think the lack of a running back that was a national name, and that goes to Bijan Robinson not wanting to, or his family not wanting him to leave too far from Arizona, so he ends up in Texas, which is still pretty far. It's not like it's next door. So not being able to capitalize maybe on what J.K. Dobbins has done and what just this Ohio State running game has done over the 2 years ago and then this year, when they have a quarterback who can run, it's kind of a dream for a running back, and to not be able to land a national guy. But the whole thing with losing the corner to Utah is crazy to me. I was looking it up. In this decade, Utah has had, I think, 6 defensive backs drafted in the NFL. Ohio State in the last, 5 or 6 years has had 6 corners or 6 defensive backs drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. And it just seems to me, this, despite the changes of the coaching staff, the one thing that maybe the most consistent thing about Ohio State since John Cooper's time is the cornerbacks. And that's like the one thing that maybe doesn't change at all. And to want to, all credit to Kyle Whittingham, is we all know he's a great coach, and they have produced some defensive backs of late, but that's an odd decision from maybe a family that either was already looking and was just looking for a reason to leave Ohio State, or maybe they just got a little bit scared and then out-recruited basically at the end.
Yeah, with Jeff Hafley leaving, it's to me this is it's a great class. It's a class that if you only lose one guy when you lose a key position coach, that's kind of a win.
It is, and even going back to when Urban retired a year ago, and they were able to keep, I think, almost everybody. That was a win. And anytime you've got change, and Jeff Hafley, I think, was 24/7's number 3 recruiter in the nation. So he's got his hands on a lot of these recruits, and to, I guess, only lose one is, like you said, it's a win. It's unfortunate that it's at a position of need because they didn't sign any corners last year. And so now you've got a situation where you're going to be losing some, maybe 3, and there's really your most proven corners after Sean Wade and Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnett, who may all go. We know Arnett and Okudah are. Sean Wade may go, but after those guys, it's Sevyn Banks and it's Cameron Brown, who have gotten a good deal of time this year, but they're going to be they'll be the most experienced guys, and who is behind them that has experience? And you're looking at, Marcus Williamson has a little bit of experience, but he's been hurt for most of his time at Ohio State. Is Amir Reep the guy who takes over for Sean Wade? So there's a lot of questions, and you need to get something from Tyreek Johnson here eventually. This is now his second year in the system. He's following in Sean Wade's footsteps, comes from the same high school, is basically family, and they're still waiting on him. And they got as many guys as they could, at corner. They lost one last year in Jordan Battle who decommitted. But yeah, that's a disappointing aspect of it, is you lose a guy you need, and it's at a position of need because you're so thin there now. And sometimes those corners turn into safety. So that's why you want as many as you can get, because they may not all be safe. They may not all be corners.
Yeah, one of the things that you can do nowadays that you couldn't do before is you have a position of need, and you can always open up the old transfer portal and see what's down there. It's kind of like the bin at Walmart with the $5 DVDs. You might find a good one in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's like I guess I want Elf for $5, and that's you look at the transfer portal now at corner, and it's not great, but there's still, the seasons aren't completely over, and players are, they'll be graduating and then hitting the open market. But right now, there's not anybody out there from what I've seen who is any better than what Ohio State already has, or is even, on that same level. And so they'll need somebody to pop up if that's the way they're going to go. And even though Ryan Day says they're kind of at their limit, he did also say, in terms of the recruiting class, they can make room for the right guys, which is the refrain of every coach in America. If you got somebody who's really good, you can get rid of somebody who is the worst player on your team for them, basically.
the Toby Flenderson on your team. You're the worst. You're out of here. Yeah. So sometimes when a position coach goes and takes another job, a player that was recruited by that coach goes with him to the new school, but Clark Phillips III not feeling it for Boston College.
Hey, man, I don't blame him. That's a long way to go when you're a California kid. I mean, you have to wonder how many California kids has Boston College signed in the last decade. If it's more than 3, I'd be pretty surprised. And but like I said, I was pretty surprised when I looked, because I was like, why would any corner, any defensive back go to Utah? And so I did the NFL draft since 2011, and I was surprised to see how many guys they had there. In fact, I believe it was one more than what Michigan has done. But, maybe that's damning with faint praise, because we know Michigan, their secondary production has not been anything good for a long time.
Yeah, so I think overall, I think everybody's excited about the wide receivers. What are the other positions that you think Ohio State really sort of killed it at?
Boy, when you look around to the entire class, I really like what the potential of Court Williams and Cody Simon as the linebackers, even though Court Williams may be like a bullet, but that could also be a Sam. That could be your Pete Werner. So those two are athletic and fast. I'm not sure about Mitchell Melton, where he fits in there. He's a bigger linebacker. Could he become a rush end? But there's some versatility there for sure. The offensive line is a mix of guys who will be in the 2 deep, maybe like 2 of those guys, Paris Johnson and Luke Whippler. And then you've got 3 or 4 developmental guys who can sit for a year. But, then you look at Ohio State's offensive line this year, and there are some people who think they could lose all 5 guys to the NFL. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, then now you're talking, you need Paris Johnson perhaps to be starting next year at left tackle or right tackle. And Luke Whippler would have to be, back up to Harry Miller as the starting center. And you're already putting players into action way earlier than you had planned. And so it's good that they signed 6 guys. The thing is, I don't know that more than 2 of them will be ready to go as certainly not as starters. You don't expect any freshman offensive lineman to come in and start, but it happens. And I guess if it would happen, it would be for a guy like Paris Johnson, who is a top 5 player in the nation and a guy seen as a can't-miss prospect. So those kind of guys are different than everybody else. Harry Miller could probably be starting, except you've got Josh Myers there. But even, it's Wyatt Davis took time. For a while, he was lost as a true freshman, and it wasn't until his redshirt freshman year, late in the year, where they were confident enough to put him in there. And, I mean, you look at Josh Myers, this is his third year, but it's his first year as a starter, and it takes time for these guys to develop, and those guys were both five-star guys. Myers eventually lost his fifth star because he got to camps and he wasn't a pass blocker, but the numbers are good there. Quarterbacks, getting two of those guys is a coup because you need those, and they probably need two more next year, but I don't know if they'll be able to do that again. But when you can get C.J. Stroud, who is the number 2 pro-style pocket passer quarterback in the nation for the composite, the 24/7 composite, like when you can get that guy in the 11th hour and as a number 2 or as the second quarterback in the class, that's pretty remarkable. And it also tells you that that's a guy who is not afraid to compete. You could say the same thing for Jack Miller, and you go back to Urban Meyer's thing, what does he look for in quarterbacks? He looks for competitors. And if you've got 2 guys who sign in the same class, it tells you that they are competitors. And it's going to be interesting. Maybe the most interesting thing to watch this spring will be those 2. And maybe some people will stick around for the entire spring game just to see how they do.
Yeah, exactly. I think overall, you can be – Ohio State fans can be excited about this class. Obviously, losing the corner wasn't ideal, but I think that they could go to LSU for that player to be named later for Joe Burrow.
You know what? You grab somebody from LSU, and I think you'll be okay. There's for a time I thought maybe they could go get Darnay Holmes at UCLA, but of course he's not going to be doing that. He's going to be headed to the NFL. There's also, you think of Ohio State going out and looking. You wonder if players will get to the point of looking at other rosters and saying, you know what, I graduate here in 3 weeks. I'm pretty darn good. I'm the best player on my team, but I could go and play at Ohio State. They need a corner. I am a corner. And you wonder if they'll start to get to that point where they're shopping around and looking for better places. Jonah Jackson was just – he was looking at Oklahoma, looking at Ohio State, looking at a couple of other places. But you wonder, at what point do they start to pinpoint exactly where they want to go? I don't know that I don't think it's gotten to that point yet, but as things get more refined and as you've got family members looking for better options because they're always – maybe unhappy with where you're at, or if you're complaining, then your family members aren't going to be happy with where you're at, and so do they start looking around for you? The portal has changed some things now. Like on the video games, you can put your wants as if you run a franchise. Say you can go into the trading blocks and say, I'm looking for a small forward, and teams will start to create these trade situations for you. What you need is for teams to go out and put on the portal what they're looking for, and maybe players can match themselves to that if we're really talking about making life for these players even better. Just make it even easier and let them know who's out there looking.
How about a Tinder-like app for players and coaches?
There you go. Perfect.
You find the matchup that you want. Good career moves. Exactly. Good career moves for the athletes. So, what are you making of these reports that Mike Yurcich is a leading candidate to become Texas's new offensive coordinator? And is that like a sub-lateral move at this point?
I don't think it is. I believe Tom Herman is talking like he's ready to hand the play calling whistle over to somebody else. Not that you call plays with a whistle, but you get the metaphor there. Yeah. But he's looking to have somebody else call the plays because it's been kind of hard as the head coach doing that. And Mike Yurcich now is He's not calling plays. How much influence does he have when you've got Kevin Wilson there? This would give him an opportunity to be the offensive coordinator instead of, you figure Ryan Day is like the head offensive coordinator. Kevin Wilson is the co-offensive coordinator with Mike Yurcich, but Yurcich is like maybe, another step below Kevin Wilson for sure. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I think it's more than a lateral move, but then you factor in, are you sure you want to go do this rather than staying where you are and looking at the success you can have? But that's going to be his call, and he's accustomed to that conference. It would not shock me at this point if he left. And I can tell you that Ryan Day has a list of guys that he would be very happy to interview for that job.
Yeah, that's what you think about. You think about, well, is Kevin Wilson's long-term future at Ohio State? Does he have a long-term future at Ohio State? Is he looking to, to get back into head coaching? I know you and Tom talked about a place like, it won't happen now, but a place like Colorado State would be a good landing spot for him, where he could have good seasons and not have to worry about having to have great seasons. If Yurcich goes to Texas, he may be a one and done there, because it seems that Tom Herman, the writing's on the wall. He basically, fire everybody. This is your last chance to really save your job, kind of thing down there.
Yeah, exactly. Are you jumping ships onto a sinking ship? And with Kevin Wilson, he does want to become a head coach again, but he's got a couple of things going against him. One is, at this point, his age. Mm-hmm. He's getting older. The whole thing with Indiana is still unfortunate for him, but it's a situation where he's at Ohio State for, I think, as long as he wants to be there. Mm-hmm. Ryan Day, they get along really well. They are a cohesive unit. They almost can finish each other's sentences at this point because they know what each other's looking for. And you look at what they've done together, what Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson have done together, and you're talking about the best offenses in Ohio State history. And to think that it all came about because of 3 years ago, this Fiesta Bowl against Clemson, 31-0. That happens, and then Urban Meyer goes out and gets these two guys who now have the top scoring offense in the nation. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball, and it changes each year. You look at last year, they threw the ball around. This year, it was Kevin Wilson today. Basically, I don't want to say he threw last year's offensive line under the bus in terms of the running game, but he just said what we all knew, that this offensive line is much better at running the ball, at blocking, and it's a more talented line than last year's. And you've seen that each week. And I think for me, Kevin Wilson is more important than Mike Yurcich, because what Mike Yurcich is doing is he's making life easier for Ryan Day, obviously, because he's the quarterback's coach. He's providing some insight. He's brought the under the center stuff. Mm-hmm. Offense that has worked well, but I don't see him as an irreplaceable guy or somebody that they can't afford to lose. And the thing is, if you're looking to go to Texas, again, like you said, okay, just know what you're getting into, because that's a place where they don't have a ton of patience anymore. And right now, Tom Herman had another year like this year. Do you think he's coming back?
No, I think his sign was when he fired everybody, all these assistant coaches are let go. That's what you do to say, okay, this is my last chance to fix it. I have to bring in new guys because these guys aren't getting it done. And then you can't blame it on those guys anymore because you've replaced them. So now if you have another subpar year, now you're the common denominator. So there's no one left to go but you.
It's interesting though. I think Texas is the common denominator.
Yeah, that's true.
It's in my theory on Texas is just it's a soft program, and it's been made soft by Mac Brown, and they just haven't been able to get out of that. And I don't know why it is. Do they get softened by their facilities, or Mac Brown used to but have like 20 guys committed really early in the class, and then they weren't the most developed guys at that point, but everybody sure loved them and talked them up, and they didn't continue to develop because it's like they lost that hunger because we've been committed to Texas forever, and you do that for 4 or 5 years in a row, and suddenly now your culture has been created, and then how do you uncreate that when it keeps getting passed down? And that's one of the things that Urban Meyer and Ryan Day has continued. That one of the differences at Ohio State is the culture, and it's not the facilities are as good as anywhere else in the nation, but they're not pampered, or they're not. I don't think they take it for granted, basically, and Texas does.
Well, Mike Yurcich coming from the Big 12, nobody knows better than him that Texas not back.
Exactly, and but then he also knows how much work it would take. But for like $1.5 million, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, that's not a bad payday. It's not, it's not, a can of beans. It's not like he wouldn't be able to find work if things didn't work out there for him. But it's I don't know what his family situation is. It's a lot to ask your family to go from Oklahoma State to Ohio State for 1 year, then Texas for perhaps only 1 year, and that kind of thing. So it will be interesting to watch to see how this whole thing turns out.
Well, and that was one of the things that Ryan Day talked about when he had 3 different jobs in 3 years, and then I think Urban Meyer offered him a job, and that was their decision. Like, this is the last job we're ever going to take, him and his wife, and they'll just stay at Ohio State for as long as possible because they don't want to. They were tired of the moving. 3 houses in 3 years, and that's a lot to put on the wife and on the kids. And I'm sure, happy wife, happy life, that whole thing. But when you're putting an entire life-changing move on the wife, and you do that for 3 years in a row, man, you better stay put for a while.
Yeah, exactly. It's the other thing that could happen for your which is not maybe not the likeliest thing, but perhaps perhaps a promotion if Tom Herman gets fired.
Hey, there you go. At least, you know what, like 3 or 4, because you're right, 3 or 4 games as the interim coach, because if things aren't going well and they're like 5-5, 10 games to play, and then think this, they fire him and say, Mike, you can be the interim coach, and then so he wins the 2 regular season games and wins the bowl game, and now you're looking at an 8-5 season. That's not bad. Things are going well. Do we stick with Yurcich? Probably not, but it's an opportunity for him to get that experience, kind of like Ryan Day had last year, where, I did it, and I did it okay. I did it well, and it's just fattens up the resume a little bit.
Exactly. Tony, why don't we turn our attention toward this week's game? The Clemson Tigers are kind of good, although they're in a conference that's kind of bad. So it's very difficult to know. It's very difficult to know how kind of good they are. It certainly seems they're a good team. They took care of business. Really weren't tested too much. North Carolina had a chance to get them, and then Mac Brown called and maybe Mac didn't call it, but the 2-point conversion was not the best option that they could have run on that particular play, but they didn't get it done, and now Clemson and Ohio State will play. Brent Venables this week called Ohio State's offense a Goliath, and does that mean his defense is going to throw rocks?
Whatever you can do, all of it will help. I was having some drinks with some Clemson beat writers this week, and they were talking about they weren't believers in the Clemson defense. You're talking about the nation's leading scoring defense, I believe, the Clemson Tigers, and they were, you've got a freshman defensive tackle starting, and he's their best defensive lineman, which Tyler Davis. I think Ohio State was after him for a while as well. He's very good, but it feels like anytime your best player is a freshman up front, that doesn't bode well. They were talking about the susceptibility of the safeties and all of these different things that nobody has been able to take advantage of yet completely because they don't have the talent. And you go back to the ACC championship game, Virginia moved the ball down the field their first two possessions really easily before things started to fall apart very badly. But you talk to the guys who see Clemson every day, and they start to tell you the weaknesses or the warts. But then we're doing the same thing, talking about Ohio State. And for me, it's protecting Justin Fields, and they have issues with that. And so if that continues to be a problem, you go back to Wisconsin sacking Justin Fields 10 times in 2 games, and that's not just the outside pass rush; it's the inside blitzes, and so there's just some interesting insights from the guys who cover the team, and because all we hear about is nobody wants to play Clemson, and it's like, well, it's not that nobody wants to play Clemson. It's like you'd rather play Oklahoma because that's an easier game, and let Clemson and LSU figure each other out, and then you only have to worry about one of them.
Right.
And it got blown up into this nobody wants to play Clemson. It's like, well, you're gonna have to. You can't avoid playing the best team, or you can't avoid what they wanted to do. What you want to do is avoid one of Clemson or LSU just because.
The reality is that nobody wants to play Clemson and LSU.
Exactly. So you figure you get an easier road, but of course that didn't happen, and here we are.
Yes, because much like a bomb, you never know what a college football playoff committee is going to do.
Man, and it's like the bomb tells you for weeks and weeks, hey guys, I'm not going to go off. We're cool. I don't want to blow up. And then at that last week, nothing really changes around the rest of the country, and then the bomb's like, boom. I had to go off. You guys should have seen it coming, and we didn't. And it's unfortunate because they liked Ohio State for so long, and then apparently that first half against Wisconsin made them see something that they really didn't like. And then, of course, LSU's defense got so much better over the last 3 weeks of the season playing Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Georgia.
Yeah, they were very impressive against those bad teams, or bad offenses anyway. Georgia's offense, were they all that impressive against Georgia? I watched the game, and Georgia just didn't even look like. Yeah. I mean, that looked like an ACC offense.
And DeAndre Swift was injured. They were without a receiver, and really just a disappointing effort at the end. But that is the SEC East.
Yeah, they dropped passes, and then Fromm missed some wide open guys. It was kind of a combination of a lot of things, but this is why Georgia didn't score a lot of points this year anyway.
What it was not was a combination of LSU's defense.
Yeah. I think that's accurate. But I think, Ohio State beat a team that the College Football Playoff Committee deemed worthy of a number 8 ranking. I believe even after the loss, they were still a number 8 ranking. So, that's obviously not that impressive. College Football Playoff Committee not impressed, but the fact that you beat their number 8 team.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add because it won't be good.
It won't be good. So it will be much like the College Football Playoff Committee. So Clemson, you talked a little bit earlier about last year's offensive line for Ohio State not being able to run block, and this year's offensive line for Ohio State, they're a bunch of mashers, but they've not been great protecting the quarterback. Has that been discussed out in the desert in terms of what has been fixed, or if they've, what steps have been taken to try to remedy that situation? Obviously, they never get very granular with that stuff, but have they talked about it at all? Yeah,
no, they don't get too deep into the weeds on that one. But I did ask Justin Fields because they have had issues with the inside blitzes, particularly against Wisconsin, and he said they've worked on that, and they've worked on all of their problems. They've been working on them. So, happy days. They've fixed everything. But yeah, if as I keep telling everybody that I talk to here, if Ohio State runs the ball and they protect Justin Fields, I don't see them losing the rest of the season. Now, protecting Justin Fields that's going to be more difficult than you just saying it, because they've had their issues. Thayer Munford can be great for 72 plays and then have like a bad 3-play stretch, and we see J.K. Dobbins having some issues picking up those inside blitzes. Jonah Jackson will have a hold here or there, which turns like a 2nd and 6 into a 1st and 16 or something, where you've almost just now destroyed the drive. And it's a situation where if they just play clean, I think they'll be okay. And the Clemson defensive line isn't. I mean, it's the shadow of what it was a year ago. But Brent Venables did say they are better in some areas than they were a year ago. But he didn't really go into it too much.
They dress better.
Yes, they do that, correct. Less character cosplay. But they don't have a lot of sacks. I think their number 2 guy has maybe 4.5 sacks on the year, or their leader may have 4.5 sacks.
Isaiah Simmons has 7. He's their leader, junior linebacker.
Right. He's everywhere.
He's the guy they'll bring up the middle, probably the way Wisconsin did. I'm sure that there's plenty of stuff on film that Brent Venables would like to see if Ohio State fixed. And Tyler Davis is number 2 at 5.5. Now you put those two together, and that's still less than Chase Young.
Yeah, and Tyler Davis is the inside guy, the defensive tackle. And they'll go from an odd front to a 4-down front. They'll throw in some bear. And then while they're doing all of this, you also have to make sure, where is Simmons? Because he's going to come from all different angles. He'll be, he's kind of like Pete Werner if Pete Werner were faster and had longer arms. And Ohio State uses Pete Werner in this way at times because he's good enough. Simmons is well beyond good enough. He is kind of the prototype. It's what you'd want there. And he can rush the passer, he can drop back and play safety. He can be your nickel linebacker, he can be a will linebacker, whatever you need, he can do it. And then you have to figure out, where is he? Do you run right at him? Do you try to get him matched up in coverage against KJ Hill? What do you do? And then you hope you execute. Basically, you can draw up everything that would have worked, but then you have to execute.
Clemson is 9th in the country against the run. Is this a defense that J.K. Dobbins can go out and get 150 yards against?
I think that's a good target. I do believe they'll be able to run on Clemson. Nobody has stopped Ohio State yet. I don't believe anybody's held them under 200 yards. I know they were over 200 yards against everybody prior to the Big Ten championship game, and I'm pretty sure when J.K. went for 150 or 170 in that game alone. Today, J.K. was asked, hey, if you needed to carry the ball 60 times in this game, would you do it? And he's like, yeah. And I said, heck, that's only 15 carries a quarter. He's like, yeah, it's only 15 carries a quarter. So he's all in. These last 3 games, this is what he's been looking forward to all season, the last 3 games, in terms of like the carries and just being the workhorse. He loves that. Mm-hmm. And he said today that he is the best running back in the nation, and he's underappreciated and disrespected, and so he's got this chip on his shoulder where he's had it all year long, and he talked about it even in the spring about how he wants to show everybody that he's the best running back in the nation because they think he was the 1,000-yard guy last year rather than the 1,400-yard freshman in 2017, and now he's shown he's much more than that, and so he's going to go out and it was interesting. He said he's not necessarily going out to prove he's better than the guy he's going against, but then you look at what they did against Wisconsin both times. You look what he did against Wisconsin and Jonathan Taylor. It's like, yeah, JK, you can say you don't look at these individual matchups, but the box score says differently, and the way you run says differently. And this is another matchup I think perhaps the two most underappreciated running backs in the nation going up against each other. And when I was trying to get the story together of, J.K. being underappreciated and Travis Etienne being underappreciated, because I know J.K. will talk about it. Yeah, I do believe I'm underappreciated. Asked Travis Etienne about it. He's like, yeah, you know what? I don't really care about that. As long as the team wins and we're successful, I'm happy. And so it's like, well, maybe that's just the way the player is. That's just, he's not trying to give me anything. So I go talk to his position coach, and he's like, no, that's just who he is. He's a quiet guy. He's not looking for any other attention, any extra attention. And it's like, well, that's boring. So
Etienne with 1,500 yards, 17 touchdowns this year. Ohio State's the seventh-ranked nationally defense against the run. Is there some concern with Jonathan Taylor breaking a couple long ones in the Big Ten championship game that maybe Clemson could have found some things there that Etienne can exploit?
I think there are concerns anytime you're missing tackles, but that's what those were. I think both of his long runs, certainly the first one, he should have been tackled, and that's not something that this Ohio State defense has had an issue with. But then later in the season, you start to see it. Maybe it was just the combination of those three games, and that third one being against Wisconsin and the best running game they faced and the best offensive line and the best running back. Maybe that was finally the lid on the jar finally got loosened, and now they've had 2 or 3 weeks to tighten that lid back up. I don't think you can necessarily expect to stop Etienne. He'll get something in terms of 30 or 40 yarder. Now, if you can limit him to one, and then everything else like 2 or 3 yards, there's no good room for him, and he finishes with 25 carries for 100 yards. I think that's okay. It's maybe the more important running guy to stop is Trevor Lawrence, who is if this is going to be the first time a lot of Buckeye fans are watching him, they're going to be surprised by how mobile he is and how fast he actually is. He's a long strider.
He's a strong guy too.
Yeah, and it's impressive to watch. And that was one of the things I talked to Chase Young about. It was exactly the answer I wanted to get from him. I said, what? Now that you've watched him, what has surprised you about Trevor Lawrence is just how mobile and how fast he is. And you see him on third downs, he can pick third downs up. They run the read option with him, and he's able to get to the corner. It's almost imagine Terrell Pryor with long, flowing blonde hair, which I'm sure you can. And that's kind of what that's what he looks like at times. He's just a tall, long strider, and he doesn't look like he's moving as fast as he is until you can't catch him. And I think they need to be able to. They can't lose contain on him, and if he's going to pick up yards, it has to be inside where somehow he just gets away from the crowd. And Chase Young talked about just having to be aware of all mobile quarterbacks. He called him a dual threat. And Justin Fields called him a dual threat as well, and you just can't let him get outside and force him back inside to where Devon Hamilton or Jayshon Cornell or Baron Browning are waiting for him.
Yeah, the thing that I found was interesting when he's got 400 yards on 77 attempts. He's the kind of guy that I think, you go into that Wisconsin game and you don't expect Jack Cohn to run the read option, and so that catches you off guard a little bit. But you're going to be prepared for this. But you have to be cognizant, I think, of this personnel wise, because you're going to need to probably spy him. I don't think that Tough Borland's the spy here. I think you're going to have maybe you have Baron Browning or Justin Hilliard or a combination of those guys, maybe keeping an eye on him on certain downs.
Yeah, and it's not a situation like last year where Dwayne Haskins and J.K. Dobbins are running the ball together and it looks like a read option, but it's just a handoff. And even the read options you didn't really need to worry about. Here you need to play this as though Trevor Lawrence could keep it. So, but then do you do it in a situation where they used to do with J.K., you play it as if the running back is going to get it because he's more dangerous, so you force the quarterback to keep it and he's less dangerous. And then maybe he's not the home run guy, so That's what Ohio State is worried about giving up. They don't want to give up any big plays. And so who would you rather run the ball, Etienne or Trevor Lawrence? They can control that on those read options. And so maybe it'll be a situation where you force the quarterback to keep it, and then that also gives you an opportunity to hit him.
Yeah.
So that's not so bad either.
Yeah, not at all. The big thing for me in this game, other than the key matchup, is keeping Justin Fields clean, especially if his knee isn't 100%, because any hit could drastically change the outlook of the game. Is how Ohio State goes up against physical receivers that are probably more physical than anybody they had faced, and if they had faced Minnesota in the Big Ten championship game, perhaps they would have had a better feel for this game. But T. Higgins has 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns. He's, I'm guessing, going to be the Jeff Okudah assignment. Justin Ross is a sophomore, but he had 742 yards, 8 touchdowns. This is a really, really solid group of receivers.
It is. It'll be the best group of receivers that the Buckeyes have faced. I asked Jeff Okudah, compare this to the Michigan group, who was probably the best before this, and he said this Clemson guys are more downfield threats. They're able to do more with the ball down the field, and you're talking about probably 2 first-rounders in T. Higgins and Justin Ross. And so Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnett are going to be matched up outside with those guys. You guys, Sean Wade, then in the slot against the Clemson slot receiver, but sometimes they'll go with 4 receivers, and Ross will move inside, and where does Wade go from there? And I get concerned. I would be concerned for Ohio State if they run I don't know how much of the 4 linebackers we're going to see. I don't know that they should show much of that, and because I don't feel like that's a great matchup for Clemson's speed, and even getting the ball out to Etienne in space, I think you'd rather have an extra defensive back out there like a Sean Wade instead of and Justin Hilliard has played great this season, but I think you need as much speed as you can have out there, just because Clemson's got more than Ohio State has seen this year. And I know Ohio State, Jeff Okudah talked to him about it, best BIA, best in America. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to show it in this one because Clemson may have the best 2 wide receivers, the best duo in America.
Yeah, this might be something they feel like they can exploit with Etienne out catching passes. They haven't done a lot of that this year. He's only averaging 2 catches a game, 22.9 yards per game. But this might be something where they feel like this is something that we can take advantage of. We don't have to maybe test Jeff Okudah, Sean Wade, Damon Arnett quite as often.
Yeah, and I believe they're getting their best tight end back as well, and he's been out. So they're going to be at full strength with the passing game, and as long as they can keep Trevor Lawrence upright, and Chase Young talking about Jackson Carman and what are they going to do, and he was basically inviting them to pass block him one-on-one, and we'll see what happens. He was pretty confident that things would go well for himself. I just wonder. I didn't get a chance to talk to him too much today. I just wonder if his days of being one-on-one for most of the game are long gone until next year when he's in the NFL.
Well, Tony, what Chip and I normally do at this point in the podcast here on the Silver Bullets is we give our score predictions and our picks to click, and I will defer to you. You will have the first choice of your score prediction for the Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State and Clemson, how do you see this one shaping up?
I have not thought about a score prediction at all until just now, but I think the over/under is 63, and I think that's pretty decent. And I think something like 34, 31, 38, 34. I know the Clemson guys are all expecting. Clemson media is all expecting shootouts in this one. I think Ohio State's defense can do fairly well, but how long can you stop them? So I don't know. You're putting me on a spot here. I did not come here for this, but how about something like 35, 34-31, and right now, do I go Ohio State, Clemson? I don't know. You're just asking for a score prediction? How about 34-31? We'll figure out the teams later.
Oh, no, you have to pick a team. That's part of this. You know, your rider was very difficult, so this is the way we get back at you.
That's true. All right. I'll go Clemson.
Tony Gerdeman. All right, so I will tell you this year, every prediction has been for an Ohio State victory, except my infamous guess
right.
about Michigan. My guess that Michigan this might be their year.
How did that turn out for you?
It turned out really well as an Ohio State fan. Because I don't mind being wrong as long as it's wrong in a good way. It's kind of like cause. It's like I approach that the same way I approach my marriage. If I'm wrong in the right way, it's a good thing.
Right. Perfect. Yes.
I am going to say these defenses are going to be very, very challenged. I'm going to go with 38-34 Ohio State. I think it's going to be a pretty good game back and forth all the way, and I think maybe J.K. Dobbins is the difference in this game.
Well, here's the bad thing. You know, when we get to picks to click, you know, I'm all in on J.K. Dobbins, and yet I'm picking Clemson because, for one, you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
For two,
Ohio State's never beaten Clemson.
There you go, and I may be feeling Ohio State later in the week, or maybe I've just been bought into the Clemson hype that we were just trashing, you know, a little bit ago. But J.K. Dobbins, I can't go against him, even though I guess I just did. But I'm with you on that pick. I think he's going to be a difference for sure.
Well, the good news for you is that you get the first choice on offense because I gave Chip the first choice on defense last time. So is J.K. Dobbins your pick to click in this game offensively?
Yeah, he definitely is, and I like your 150-yard target. And I wonder what Ohio State's record is when their running back has 150 yards. I imagine over the last century, it's pretty good, and yeah, I like J.K. I just don't think he's going to be stopped or denied. I go back to keeping Justin Fields upright and healthy. I think they still need to do both. I think J.K. can run well, and Ohio State can still lose because of drives getting stopped with a sack that makes it third and long because we've seen it all season where J.K. will run, and then Ryan Day will call 3 straight passes or whatever, and the drive is killed. And I'm not saying he's a bad play caller. I think those are your words. No, but you know what I'm saying, where it's sometimes these drives where J.K. is doing well and will get stalled. And so I see there is perhaps a way that he could be outstanding and Ohio State still lose, but and you're trying to talk me into this Ohio State thing, and it's working.
Okay, well, you know, the thing is that you're right. We've seen it. We've even seen it as recently as the Wisconsin game when Ohio State was getting ready to put the game away. They had a first and goal, and they tried run. I believe they tried pass rather than just keep giving it to J.K. And I think the run might even have been a Justin Fields run, even on the bad knee. So. Or maybe that was a scramble. I'm trying to remember. My memory's not good. Tony, leave me alone. I'm old.
Hey, I'm with you.
But I think you're right. There's sometimes that they just kind of get away from doing what's working because they think, wow, now's the time to spring the surprise.
Exactly.
Well, why spring the surprise if the unsurprise is working? There's no need to have the surprise. So
yeah.
But you took J.K. We have a tradition here where we don't take somebody the other person took. So I'm going to go with, I think, a guy he didn't get in the end zone last game. I think that's going to change this week. I think Chris Olave is poised for a big game. He usually shows up in big games. So I like Chris Olave here on the offensive side. which brings us to the defensive side. We kind of do this the sort of the fantasy football draft way, where if you get the last pick in the first round, you get the first pick in the second round. So I'm going to go defensively. We have seen, I think we've just seen too much quietness out of Chase Young, and I'm going to say Chase Young gets to Trevor Lawrence a couple times and maybe even a strip sack in this game. So that would put you on the clock for your defensive pick to click.
First, I commend you for the Chris Olave thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing, we get all of the attention. We've talked about these Clemson receivers, and we just finally got to Chris Olave. So don't forget about that when he ends up lighting up the Tigers, and maybe he's the difference. So I'll commend you again for saying stuff that I wish I probably had said. Defensively, I'm going to go with Shaun Wade, who it'll be matched up in the slot, and maybe they bring him on a couple of blitzes as they've done it throughout the season here and there, presuming he's fully healthy. This might be his last couple of games at Ohio State, or it could be the springboard to a next year as a Buckeye looking to become a top 10, top 5 pick. Maybe they move him around a little bit, make some things happen there. So, yeah, I'll go with Shaun Wade. I think he's due. I know he's hungry because he's not been able to go, and hopefully he is set and recovered because he's hungry, and this is why he came to Ohio State. The NFL is a goal. Playing in these games is a goal against top flight receivers. Talking to Jeff Okuda today, I wanted to be like, this is pretty much the first day of the NFL Combine. This game, this is where it really gets started, because they want to see how you do against these guys. And it's the same thing for Shaun Wade, and it could propel him this year. It could propel him into next year. And I think he's going to take it very seriously. Right,
because these are the guys that they're going to be on draft boards, and if you can lock down a guy like T. Higgins, I mean, that's going to go a long way. You're gonna probably make a few extra dollar bills that way.
Yep, and everybody's going to be watching, and it's real game. It's not combine this, or it's not the 40. It's what are you actually doing when the whistle is going and plays are going and the football is flying, and he's due, and that's my pick. I probably would have gone with Chase Young, but I get it.
Well, on your podcast with Tom, you could take Chase Young.
Well, we also try not to pick each other's players. Sometimes I don't know that we necessarily have an order. I think it's whoever shouts it first and loudest gets it.
Yeah, I tend to give Chip the first pick, and then we alternate it offense defense from week to week. So it just keeps it fair. I just want Chip to have a chance.
Yeah, there you
go. So before we wrap up, always this time of year we hear about somebody that has kind of come out of nowhere and had a really great couple weeks of practice. Has that name emerged from this bowl season with the later than usual Big Ten championship game?
No, but again, this was the first chance we got to talk to anybody, and I was running around spending 5 minutes with each of the 7 or 8 people. But honestly, there's not been a lot of time to develop or to give focus to the young players because it has been a short turnaround, and that's something that Clemson is experiencing as well, where they haven't had as many opportunities to rest some of the older guys because they've had days off, and you've got the holiday, and then they're in game prep right now. So it's been a disjointed bowl prep that, unfortunately, you've got these bowl practices, and the young guys are kind of getting the shaft a little bit compared to the teams not in the playoffs, and they're not going to get much more opportunity if whoever wins this game to get young guys ready, because now you're talking about the national championship, and you don't want to burn out your veterans, but you still have to get them prepared. And I do wonder, and maybe something to talk to Ryan Day about. Not that he would have too much experience as a head coach, but just do you get to develop the young guys more if you're not in the playoffs?
Yeah.
And not that you would rather be out of the playoffs, but it's almost you've lost that ability to do that because of this odd schedule.
Yeah. So, obviously Dabo Swinney would have you, he has informed us quite often that his team is the team that is, the most disrespected, and nobody believes in them, and everybody wants them out of the playoff. But probably if there's a second most disrespected team in this playoff, it's Oklahoma. Do you see any scenario in which the Sooners surprise LSU and pull the upset in the other semifinal game?
I am not a believer in LSU's defense, so I could see that, provided Jalen Hurts doesn't turn it over. Like, if he has no turnovers, I think they have a decent shot of winning. But him having no turnovers, I don't know if there's a decent shot of that actually happening. But
yeah.
as long as he doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to score on most of their possessions. So then LSU's going to have to keep up. And, if he can put some pressure on LSU, yeah, Joe Burrow is perfectly capable of withstanding that pressure, and he kind of thrives in that. But it's the biggest stage he's ever been on. And there is all of these expectations on LSU, the number one team, they're this, they're that. They're expected to win. And, Oklahoma is not expected to. And maybe if it's still a game in the third quarter, LSU starts to get a little tight and starts to clinch, and maybe some things can happen. I think Oklahoma can definitely win it. I just don't expect Jalen Hurts to play perfect football for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think he has to go turnover free, and he sure hasn't been able to do that in his conference, so I don't know how he's going to do that against LSU. So we will see how that unfolds. But yeah, it's Ed Orgeron in the college football playoff semifinals. I don't know how many people would have predicted that a couple of years ago.
0.
Okay, so I do know how many people now that would have predicted that. Thanks for telling me. I appreciate that. I always look for more knowledge on a daily basis. So,
and I love to correct people.
Yes, yeah. I've learned that from listening to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I do thank you, Tony, for stepping in for Chip this week. Chip had some family stuff that he had to deal with, and we hope everybody turns out to be okay. And it's I'll let Chip put out whatever information he wants to put out when he returns. But it was a little bit of a scramble this week as we record this on Christmas Eve because there's nothing really going on for anybody on the Christmas holiday. But I appreciate you stepping in and filling in. I think that there are some people that have been waiting for you and I to do a podcast for quite some time, and now they can rest easy because they at long last have gotten their wish.
Well, there you go, and I apologize that I don't have the best equipment right now, but I do the best I can. Actually, that's actually not true. I do the least, not the least, but somewhere in the middle. I do the happiest medium I can to the bare minimum of your requirements. And here I am.
All right. You can, we have some questions from week to week. We didn't have any questions this week sent in because everybody's busy shopping and wrapping. But you can hit up Chip or myself on Twitter with the hashtag SBP Mailbag. If you have any questions for us, we'll be happy to answer them next week. And my Twitter handle is @Mike36Fan, and Chip's is @ChipMinnick, and you can spell his last name MINNICH, and you can spell it that way because that's how it's spelled. And
there you go.
That's how you reach him. Tony, where can people, as if they didn't know, where can people find you on Twitter?
On Twitter @Tony Gerdeman, and Tony, Tony Gerdeman, Gerdeman, and that's where I'll be most of my life.
Most of your life. You can, of course, read Tony's stuff on theozone.net. My stuff can be found on the Hayes and Cannon section of that very same website. I am the grumpy old Buckeye, and you can read my report on what you should be irritated about every week after the game. And if you like other kinds of writing and like music, writing about music, you can check out my blog, michaellikestowrite.com. Check out all the other fine programs on the Ozone Radio Network. Of course, the Buckeye Sloopcast is every Monday and Friday, and the Buckeye Weekly is seemingly any day.
That we're trying to figure out. I'm probably going to grab a couple of people here randomly to fill out a couple of shows, because Tom won't get in until Christmas night because he's doing family stuff this time of year. Right? Yeah. So we'll have to. I feel like I'm underperforming in terms of the podcasting right now, so I'll have to crank something out here. Gosh, tonight maybe even.
Well, so I'm a little bit concerned about Tom's lack of commitment, but other than that,
you're right. We'll talk to him. We'll talk to him about it.
Yeah. You have to have that heart-to-heart. We'll sit down. Maybe say, how bad do you want to be here? The transfer portal is calling. Maybe we can find a spot for you with Sons of Schmidt or something.
Tom, it's either your wife and your kids or it's us. Right? You have to make a decision.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and you have the Patreon. You have a Patreon support system set up that your subscribers can get extra podcasts. You're doing extra stuff.
Yeah, extra stuff. Patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly. All of our podcasts are there ad free, and then we do right now. Well, couple of bonus per week, except for this past week, and so we promised one extra a month, but we've been over delivering. So I apologize for that.
All right. Again, thanks Tony for filling in with Chip. Chip should be back next week, and we will discuss the Ohio State Clemson game, and if things go well for the Buckeyes, we will be previewing the winner of the Oklahoma LSU game as well. So until next week, we'll sign off the way we usually do by saying, Go Bucks!